Witness for the prosecution.
The National Broadcasting Company presents the Radio City Playhouse, Attraction 34. Tonight, we bring you a story with an unusual twist, a story by Agatha Christie titled Witness for the Prosecution. Our featured players include Arnold Moss as Mr. Mayhern, David Gothard as Leonard Vole, the accused, and Lottie Stolke as Romaine, the witness for the prosecution, in this, Attraction 34 on Radio City Playhouse.
Why, the light's still on in the parlor, and it's midnight. Surely Mr. Vole hasn't stayed with Miss French till this hour. Miss French, are you still up? You should have been in bed long ago. Ah! Miss French!
Read all about it. Read all about it. The Hatchet murders committed in Hillsdale. Police arrested Leonard Vole as a suspect. Read all about it. Hatchet murder in Hillsdale.
Yeah, cell's right here, Mr. Mayhern.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Vole.
Oh, hello, Mr. Mayhern.
You have 30 minutes.
I've come to talk with you, Mr. Vole.
Yes. Sorry, Mr. Mayhern. I just can't seem to realize yet I'm charged with murder. Murder! Such a horrible crime, too. Looks bad for me, doesn't it?
Does look kind of black, Mr. Vole. We're going to make a determined effort to get you off.
You think I'm guilty, don't you? I know you do. But I swear I'm not. I didn't do it, Mr. Mayhern. I didn't do it.
Well, then, I'll accept your assurance, but I must know the worst. I must know just how damaging the case against you is likely to be. Now, Mr. Vole, the utmost frankness. You understand that?
Yes. I'll be completely honest with you.
Very well. I want you to tell me exactly how you came to make the acquaintance of Miss Emily French.
It was one day on Main Street. I saw an elderly lady trying to cross the road in heavy traffic. She dropped her packages. I picked them up out of common courtesy and offered to help carry them home.
And she was grateful.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, she was dressed so poorly I had no idea she'd turn out to be as wealthy as she was.
But you did find out. Now, the first aim of the prosecution will be to establish that you were low financially at that particular moment. You were, weren't you?
Yes. I had been having a lot of bad luck.
Yes, of course. Remember, I'm looking at this from the point of view of the prosecution. Now, why did you, a young man of 33, good-looking, fond of sport, popular with your friends, devote so much of your time to an elderly woman with whom you could hardly have had anything in common?
Well, I'm one of those persons who can't say no. And believe me or not, after a few visits, I found myself getting genuinely fond of the old lady. I'd been an orphan, and I suppose I enjoyed being pampered and...
No, they really aren't anything much.
Why, Miss French, they're the nicest pair of socks I've ever had. You actually knitted them yourself?
Oh, yes, yes.
That must have been quite a job.
Oh, what else have I to do with my time?
Well, I can't tell you how I appreciate...
Miss French,
Yes, Janet?
it's almost 10 o'clock.
Well?
Don't you think you should retire?
Now, Janet, stop worrying about me.
But it isn't good for you to stay up late.
Now, Janet, you go on to bed. Mr. Vole and I have a few things to discuss.
I'll stay up until you're ready to retire, Miss French.
I don't think Janet likes me, Miss French.
Janet's been with me for almost 30 years, and she's become very attached to me. I suppose she may be a bit jealous of you.
Of me?
Yes, she knows how fond I am of you, and I am, you know. Why, you seem like an adopted son to me.
Well, you're very kind, but I mustn't keep you up any longer.
Oh, no, don't go. There really is something I want to talk to you about. Something very, very important.
It was then she asked me to look after her business affairs.
Mm-hmm.
She understood very little about money matters and was worried over some
Now,
investments.
wait a minute, Mr. Vole. Janet McKenzie says her mistress was a good businesswoman, and that's substantiated by the testimony of her banker.
I can't help that. It's what she told me. And I swear to you that my dealings were all perfectly fair and above board. The prosecution can't get hold of a thing on that score.
Well, you relieve my mind very much. I pay you the compliment of believing that you're far too clever to lie to me on such an important point. Of course, whether the jury will take that view is another matter.
I've been completely truthful, Mr. Mayhern.
Well, now that's one more question. Did Miss French know that you were married?
Well, yes.
Did you ever take your wife to see her?
No.
Why not?
Well, I'll make a clean breast of it. Somehow Miss French had gotten the idea that Romaine and I didn't get along, that we were living apart.
Mm-hmm. You didn't give her that idea.
No, not at all. But I let her go on believing it because, well, she was fond of me, but she wasn't interested in the struggles of a young couple. Mr. Mayhern, I wanted to borrow some money from Miss French for Romaine's sake, more than for mine.
Did you borrow it?
I never had a chance to. Surely that's the strongest point in my favor. I wanted to borrow money from her, but her death ruined that completely.
Aren't you aware, Mr. Vole, that Miss French left a will in which you are the principal beneficiary?
What? Good Lord, what are you saying? She left me her money?
Do you pretend to know nothing of this will?
Pretend? There's no pretense about it.
I certainly hope we can prove that.
Now I'm beginning to see how things stand. They'll say I got to her to make a will leaving me her money, that I went there that night, that there was no one in the house, and that...
You're wrong about there being no one in the house.
How's that?
Well, you see, it was Janet's night out, but she returned for a few minutes around 9:30 to get some kind of a blouse pattern she'd promised a friend. She used the back stairway, but she swears she heard voices in the parlor, and that one was Mrs. French's and one was a man's.
At 9:30? 9:30?
What do
But then I'm saved!
What do you mean?
I was home again by 9:30. My wife can prove that.
Your wife?
Yes. I left Miss French about 5 minutes to 9, and I arrived home about 9:20. Thank heaven for Janet Mackenzie's blouse pattern.
Mr. Vole, was there anyone else who saw you come home at that time to substantiate your wife's testimony?
No. But it's lucky for me Romaine was there.
In fact, it appears to be the only thing in our favor at the moment. Well, goodbye, Mr. Vole. May I say that I believe in your innocence in spite of the many facts against you, and I hope to prove it and vindicate you completely.
What is it?
I'd like to see Mrs. Leonard Vole, please.
Yeah?
I'm Henry Mayhern, Mr. Vole's lawyer. Is Mrs. Vole in?
I'm the one you wish to see, I believe.
Why, you're Mrs. Vole? Why, I thought...
You expected me to be different?
Well...
I'm afraid I'm not the typical housewife. I was an actress in Vienna before I met Leonard.
I see. Well, Mrs. Vole, I've just come from your husband. I know how upset you must be. But if you don't mind, I'd like to talk with you.
Yes, you may come in.
Thank you very much.
Sit down, Mr.
Mayhern.
Mayhern.
Thank you.
I know that you will try, how do you say, to spare me as much as you can, but I want to know everything. Do you understand? I want to know the worst.
Very well, Mrs. Vole. I'll be perfectly frank with you. The case is quite black against your husband. Everything is against him, except one thing.
And what is that?
Miss French's maid will testify that she heard voices, those of Miss French and a man talking in the parlor at 9:30. However, Mr. Vole says that he returned home at 9:20, and that you were here when he arrived. Now, if we can establish...
I see. You want me to say he came in at 9:20 that night?
He did come in at that time, didn't he?
That's not the point. Will my saying so acquit him? Will they believe me?
Well, it would certainly be helpful if we had another witness, but...
But you do not.
Well, to be honest with you, I must say that jury isn't apt to put too much faith in the testimony of a devoted wife. Nevertheless...
Did he tell you I was devoted to him?
Well, we never...
Yes. I think he did. How stupid men are.
Now look, Miss Vole, I know that under the circumstances...
You know nothing about the circumstances. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. I would like to see him dead.
This is quite...
Perhaps I shall see. Suppose I tell you he did not come in that night at 9:20, but at 10:20. Suppose I tell you there was blood on his coat. What if I stand up in court and say all these things?
You, cannot be asked to give evidence against your husband.
He is not my husband.
He... What do you mean?
My name is Romaine Heigler. My real husband is alive, but in a madhouse. So Leonard and I could not marry. I am glad now, very glad.
I see. But may I ask why you're so bitter against Leonard Vole?
Yes, you would like to know. But I shall not tell you. I will keep my secret. I'm free now to play a lone hand.
Well, there seems no point in prolonging this interview.
Wait. Tell me one thing. Did you honestly believe Leonard was innocent when you came here today?
I did. And I still believe so.
You poor little lamb.
I don't understand her attitude, Mr. Mayhern. I can't explain it. You've given me the shock of my life.
I must say it's extraordinary. The whole thing. An extraordinary woman. Very dangerous.
She's the only person who can testify that I came home at 9:20. And I did come home then. I swear to you I did.
Well, Mr. Vole, I sincerely believe you, if for no other reason because there's too much evidence against you. This woman is obviously trumping up the whole story.
Of course she is. But will the jury believe her?
Well, that's the question. But if she won't testify, she was fiery with me, but I don't think she'll dare to tell such lies in court.
You don't sound too convinced of that, Mr. Mayhern.
Well, perhaps I don't. Janet McKenzie's testimony will be damaging enough. If they think to call Miss Heigler to the stand, well, we can only wait and hope. Wait and hope.
Order in the court! Order in the court! The counsel for the prosecution may continue.
Now, how long were you in the employ of Miss Emily French, Miss Mackenzie?
30 years.
And over that period of time, you became somewhat of a companion as well as a maid?
Yes, Miss French confided most of her personal affairs to me.
And did she speak to you at any time concerning the prisoner, Leonard Vole?
Indeed she did. He warmed himself into Miss French's affections, good and proper.
Your Honor, I object. That statement is irrelevant to the question.
Objection sustained. Silence in the court. Continue.
Miss Mackenzie, was Miss French under the impression that Mr. Vole was married?
No, she was not. She told me that she was thinking of marrying him.
What? Oh, that's incredible. That old woman.
Order in the court.
Oh, this is terrible.
Now, Miss Mackenzie, when Miss French's will was read, it was learned that she had named Leonard Vole as her principal beneficiary. Were you aware of this fact previous to the opening of the will?
Yes, she told me about it the day she made the will. And she told Leonard Vole, too. He helped her draw up the will.
Are you finished with this examination? Very well, Miss Mackenzie. You may step down. Will the state proceed to call the next witness?
Sorry, Mr. Vole.
That guy's guilty.
I couldn't shake her. I had hoped to be able to break her down.
Terrible.
But she made up half of what she said on the stand, Mr. Mayhern. I swear she did. Janet hates me, Mr. Mayhern.
Obviously. Well, maybe the jury will realize she has no reason to love you and will discard her testimony accordingly.
It looks bad for me, doesn't it?
It could be worse. We may be all right.
If it please the court, our next witness, Your Honor, will Miss Romaine Heigler please take the stand? Your name is Romaine Heigler?
Yes,
You are an Austrian subject.
yes,
Now, for the last 3 years, you have lived with the prisoner and passed yourself off as his wife.
yes.
Miss Heigler, do you recall the night of Tuesday, March 18th?
Very clearly,
Where were you?
at my home.
The home you shared with the prisoner.
Yes.
And where was he that night?
He was at home until 7:45.
Where did he go then?
To the house of Emily French.
Oh, my gosh.
Did he take anything with him?
Yes. He took a pair of gloves and a hatchet.
No! I deny that!
Silence! Silence! I'll have no emotional outbursts.
And what time did he return to your home?
At 20 minutes past 10.
He's guilty.
That is a lie, and you know it. I returned at 20 minutes past 9.
If there are any more of these displays from the defendant, I shall hold you in contempt of court. The prosecution will continue.
Ms. Heigler, will you please tell the court in your own words what transpired when the prisoner returned at 20 minutes past 10?
When I came home, his shirt front was stained with blood. I asked him what had happened. At first, he pretended he had fallen and hurt himself. But I soon found out this was not true. Finally, he admitted he had killed Emily French.
No! She's lying, I tell you!
Mr. Vole,
This
one
is
more
crazy.
outburst and I'll have you
She's
removed
guilty
from
as
the
sin.
courtroom.
Please continue your testimony, Ms. Heigler. The prisoner admitted the murder of Emily French.
Yes. When he came home, he had a wild stare in his eyes. He grabbed my wrist so tightly, I cried out in pain. And he slapped my face several times and told me to shut up before the neighbors heard me. He told me he had killed her for her money. And if I ever breathed a word, he'd kill me too. His exact words were, "Watch your step. It's even easier to commit a second murder."
Mr. Mayhern, I didn't expect to see you again this evening.
Well, I came because a rather strange thing has happened. When I reached my apartment, I found this letter. It's signed by a Mrs. Bandowski. Ever heard of her?
Bandowski?
Uh-huh.
No.
Well, listen to what she has to say. Dear Mr. Lawyer, if you want that painted Heigler woman showed up what she is, her and her pack of lies, you just come to 516 Gay Street, Greenwich Village tonight. It'll cost you $200, so don't come unless you're willing to pay. Ask for Mrs. Bandowski. Are you sure that name means nothing to you?
I never heard of her.
Well, did Mrs. Heigler ever mention her at any time?
Not as I can remember. She's probably just a crackpot trying to get some easy money.
Perhaps. And yet the way things stand now, we've nothing to lose. I'm going to pay Mrs. Bandowski a visit this evening. Mrs. Bandowski?
So, it's dearie. Nobody with you, is there?
No. I'm alone.
Good. Good. I don't go in for playing tricks. Nor for people who play 'em. Coming. You'll have to forgive the looks in me room. I don't exactly live in what you'd call the lap of luxury. Well, didn't no one ever tell you it's impolite to stare, Mr. Mayon? A proper sort of gentleman like you.
Excuse me,
You're wondering why I hide my beauty behind this veil, huh? Well, I'll give you a little peek.
Oh, no!
So, you're not anxious to kiss my scarlet face, huh? Well, I don't wonder. And yet, would you believe me now? I was a pretty girl once. Even you might have taken a shine to me.
Look.
It's all their fault. You understand that? She's the cause of all this. She took the only man I ever loved away from me. Yeah, her. And when I went after Max, and I was after her too, he threw vitriol in me face. Vitriol! Have you ever thought what it would be like to have your face burnt off of ya? And she laughed. She laughed. I've had it in for her ever since. And now...
Tell me, what is this information you said?
What about the money?
It's your duty to give information. You can be called upon to do so.
Oh, no. You give me 200. And perhaps I can give you a hint or two, eh?
What? Kind of a hint.
What should you say to a letter? A letter from her. Never mind how I got hold of it. That's my business. It'll do the trick. But the money.
I have the money. Here. I'll put it on the table.
Aha!
Don't touch it. Let me see your evidence first.
Here we are. A whole bundle of letters in her handwriting. It's the first letter you want. That'll do the trick. Just you read it.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I charge that the testimony of Romaine Heigler has been a malicious fabrication from beginning to end.
What?
Yes, I accuse Romaine Heigler of inventing her testimony to send an innocent man to his death.
This is absurd.
Miss Heigler, do you deny that you're in love with a man other than Mr. Vole?
Of course, I deny it. What a ridiculous statement. I was completely faithful to Leonard Vole until he became a horrible murderer and threatened to kill me too.
And you still maintain that the defendant confessed to committing the crime?
Of course I do. I spoke to it yesterday. It's true. What are these utterly foolish questions about?
They're about just this, Miss Heigler. I offer as evidence to the court this letter written in your own handwriting. It reads as follows. Max, beloved, the fates have delivered him into our hands. He has been arrested for murder, but yes, the murder of an old lady. Leonard, who would not hurt a fly. At last I shall have my revenge. The poor chicken. I shall say that he came in that night with blood upon him, that he confessed the crime to me. I shall hang him, Max, and when he hangs, he will know and realize that it was Romaine who sent him to his death, and then happiness, beloved, happiness at last.
Oh my God.
Silence! Silence in the court!
Your Honor, I have here in court 3 handwriting experts of excellent reputation who are ready to testify that this letter was written by none other than Romaine Heigler. May I call them to the stand?
Yes, you may call them.
Well,
Oh, that won't be necessary.
why not, Ms. Heigler?
I'll tell the court.
Tell them what?
The truth.
What is the truth, Ms. Heigler?
Everything you have said is true. I wrote that letter.
Yes. Yes, go on.
Everything Leonard said was true. I lied.
What did you lie about, Miss Heigler?
My testimony was all a lie. Leonard did return home at 9:20 as he testified. I invented the whole story. I admit it. I wanted to destroy him. I wanted to send him to his death so I could be free. I didn't want you to believe that he was innocent.
Oh, fresh air. Can I really believe it, Mr. Mayhern? I'm actually free.
We're happy to say that you are indeed acquitted.
Oh, things looked so black for me yesterday.
You had the closest of all possible shaves. But no need to think of past troubles now. You're a very fortunate man, Mr. Vole. Of course, this business of Miss Heigler may have been a bit of a shock, but I'd say you're well off without her.
Oh, I've learned my lesson with her. I shan't be such a fool with another woman, but I don't even give her a thought anymore. I'm free. That's all that matters. Let's cross the street here, shall we?
It was a very close call, but as I told you before, I believe that justice always wins out at the end. And Mr. Vole, look out!
Oh, yes, Mr. Mayhern. You defended Mr. Vole, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Come this way. He's in this room on the left. Tragic, wasn't it? His untimely death?
He had everything to live for. It's ironic, really, to escape death so narrowly in the courtroom, only to walk outside and meet it in the street.
Fate had it in for him, I guess.
Many people see him?
Oh, there had been, but they're most all gone now. I think there's only one left, a relative of some sort. In there, Mr. Mayhern.
Thank you. Pardon me. I hope you won't think that I'm intruding.
Come in, Mr. Mayhern.
Miss Heigler?
Yes.
I didn't recognize you in that veil.
Oh, go on. You did not expect to find me here.
No, quite frankly, I didn't. But then,
Go on, say it.
well, after what's happened, I suppose nothing you do should surprise me, considering that you have done or tried to do to him. But I hardly thought you'd make a mockery of his death.
By wearing the veil of mourning.
Yes.
Strange. I thought you were cleverer than that, Mr. Mayhern.
What?
Not the first time you have failed to see through a veil.
What are you talking about?
The woman on Gay Street. Do you remember?
Well, yeah. Miss Heigler?
You never guessed that I was Mrs. Bandowski.
But that's impossible.
No. Have you forgotten? I was an actress.
Well, yes, I know, but I mean her face. Her face.
Oh, that was easy enough. At night, when the room was too dark for you to see through the veil, you know, it was only makeup.
But why? Why?
Why did I play a lone hand? Because I loved him. Because I had to save him.
But why such an elaborate comedy as that? Why didn't you simply testify in his favor?
Oh, no. The evidence of a woman devoted to him would not have been enough. You hinted as much yourself. They would not have believed me.
Perhaps, but
But if I testified falsely against him, and you forced a confession from me that was all a lie, then I would be damned in the eyes of the law, and the jury would be bound to acquit him.
And, the bundle of letters?
I wrote them myself.
What about the man called Max?
Never existed.
I see. Well, I'm afraid I misjudged you, Miss Heigler. But I still think we could have gotten him off by the normal procedure.
I dare not risk it. You had no evidence to prove Leonard's innocence. You merely believed it.
And you? You knew it, I see.
My dear Mr. Mayhern, you do not see it at all. On the contrary, I knew he was guilty.
You have just heard Witness for the Prosecution by Agatha Christie, adapted for radio by Agnes Eckhart. In tonight's play, Andre Dixon was heard as Mr. Mayhern, and Jay Summerfield was the voice of Leonard Vole. The unique role of Romaine Heigler, a.k.a. Mrs. Bandowski, was shared by Chris Martin and Donna Amesmeyer, respectively. Others in tonight's cast were Judy Marsh as the victim, Miss French, Sue Gadzinski as Janet, her housekeeper John Shefke as the judge, Herb Thompson as the jailer, Tony Hanuska was the newsboy, John Wirtz played the friendly undertaker, and Ellie Babka as the Heigler maid. As always, music was conducted by John P. Gelsomino with sound effects created by Tom Lenz. Your announcer is, yours truly, Rob Humph. This is NBC, the National Broadcasting Company.